Okay, today we're going to be talking about ditching your inner critic. So, if you're wondering how to get started decluttering without overwhelming, okay, let's try that again. If you're wondering how to start decluttering when you're feeling overwhelmed, we're going to talk about addressing your inner critic today because this is one of the biggest things that can stall your decluttering progress. So, let's talk about the chair. Maybe you have a chair. It's that place in your room where you like toss all the clothes and you're not quite sure if they're dirty or clean, but you just keep tossing and they keep piling on there. I used to have a chair. Maybe you don't have a chair. Maybe you have like a kitchen counter or boxes and boxes of paper that have not been dealt with. Or maybe for you, it's a closet. It's like you can't do it. It's like you look at that space, that chair, that closet, and your brain just starts shutting down, just exhausted before you've even started. And I want to kind of walk through because I think the reality is it's not like just the overwhelm that's the problem. I think really there's an inner critic possibly at play. So I want to share 3 ways that your inner critic may be stirring up that overwhelm and delaying your decluttering progress. To overcome this inner critic is going to require some mindset shifts. So, mindset shift number 1 that I want you to try is ditching perfection for intentional improvement. This mindset shift is based on the inner critic that will say, if you can't declutter the whole office, don't even bother trying. It's not worth your time. And really, that inner critic is just communicating that intentional improvement isn't enough. And I would beg to differ because the small habits that we build, that we compound over time, are actually what yield the greatest results. And what I'd like for you to do is to take a little step back and go, maybe you don't have time for the whole office. That's fine. But what if you have 10 minutes? What if you look for those tiny pockets of time that you can intentionally improve your space? And so your new goal could be, I'm going to take 10 minutes and I'm going to clear this shelf. And whatever I get done is what I get done. It's going to be improved. If I have extra time and if I have extra energy, then I can continue. And that's great. And if I want to stop at the end of the 10 minutes, that's fine too. I have intentionally improved my space. It's better than it was before. And so flipping that narrative onto its head, that narrative that it has to be totally done or it has to be perfectly done, or you can only attack that space when you have time to do the whole thing at once. Let's flip that narrative and see how successful it is, because it's when you do these little tiny pockets of time and you create these smaller goals that we actually create moments that we can win. Like in 10 minutes, you probably could do the shelf, and then you might even have time to do another shelf, or you might feel that win and go, oh my goodness, that's great. Let me just tackle this other spot. So instead of, I can't, there's no way I'm ever going to get to all that, I'm going to change that narrative that I say to myself and say, you know what, I'm going to take 10 minutes and I'm going to tackle this one shelf and I'll get done what I get done. And if I have extra time and I have extra energy, I can do more, but I don't have to. And what that does is it changes the end goal, right? So by not making the goal perfection and completely done, by not making, by changing that from being the goal to making it something more smaller and attainable, we actually are able to get a win. And that gives us a little fuel and a little motivation to keep going. So, mindset shift number 2 is you're going to view yourself as the inventory manager. So the inner critic that prompts this mindset shift is the one that says, you've let it get this bad. You're buried in your clutter. You have no control. And this is false. But it's an argument we often win with ourselves or our inner critic wins. So to fight this role, you need to understand the powerful role and position that you have, even if you don't acknowledge it or haven't accepted it yet. From the moment you're a toddler and you can say, "That's mine," till the moment that you pass, you are tasked with the role of managing your stuff. And maybe you were, but maybe you weren't taught this life skill. Often we have well-meaning parents that want to be helpful and want to provide for us and care for us and love for us. And so they often end up doing things for us, which is a blessing and a gift. But then we find ourselves leaving the home, entering adulthood. Maybe we're going through college, getting a job, starting families of our own, having our own kids. And amongst the bills and the responsibilities, life feels like it piles up. And if we didn't realize that managing our home was a skill that we needed to be practicing along the way, if you're anything like me, it's really easy for your house to get messy. The first 5 to 7 years of our marriage, our home was mostly chaos. We still had boxes in our living area that never got unpacked the whole time we lived in our first townhome. If you're anything like I was, there's no shame in not realizing that this was a skill that you needed to learn. But I'm here to tell you it is such a helpful skill. And if you'll take a little bit of time to kind of step into the role, it really is like an enjoyable space to to be the manager of your stuff. I like to think of it like I'm a curator. So I love walking around museums, and when you look at a museum, I mean, everything's so thoughtfully and intentionally placed. My home does not look like it belongs in a magazine, but what I have come to see and appreciate is the value in being intentional with what we bring into, with what we keep in our home. And so I I would charge you to consider that role, curate. You're looking for the right things that go together, that fit perfectly for what you need to be able to enjoy, either through function or for its beauty. A freeing reality is that this role of manager of your stuff is already yours. You just have to step into it. You just have to own it. And what I love is like dialing into our uniqueness here. So we're all uniquely created and uniquely made and uniquely wired. And this role of intentionality when it comes to the belongings of our possessions plays into this role of curation for the items in our home, right? Like that museum curator curates the items in our home, we, as our home manager, as our possessions manager, get to steward what we've been given, but we also get to dial into this uniqueness factor. And one of the things that maybe might differentiate me from you is our clutter threshold. As uniquely wired individuals, we all have different tolerance levels. And so um, I would encourage you to kind of pay attention. Like, are you the kind of person when you walk into a space and you see everything on the wall, like when you see all of your stuff out, it makes you anxious? Because we also all have different organizing styles. Maybe you're the type of person who needs to see your stuff to remember it, and maybe that makes you feel calm. So dial in and tune into how you're wired, how it helps you to function, how your things are stored. Do you need to see your stuff? Does it need to be closed behind closed doors? That's one aspect. And then the other aspect is inventory. So I want you to imagine like a dial, like we have these dials. So a pivotal key in stepping into the role of manager of your home and overcoming that inner critic of no point, no point in trying, is acknowledging your own clutter threshold and then fine tuning the inventory dials, if you will. So imagine like two dials. We have inventory going out, we have inventory coming in. Your job as the manager of your home is to fine tune your inventory dials. You're going to modify the amount going out and the amount coming in until you have an amount that you feel like you can maintain. This is what's referred to as maintenance mode. You want to fine tune that dial, adjust what's going out, adjust what's coming in until you have an inventory level in your home that feels easily managed. It's easy to care for the things you have because you don't have too much. You don't have too little, you don't have too much. So you're going to hush that inner critic by stepping into this role, and you get to say what stays, what goes, what comes in, what needs to go out. And when you do that, your inner critic will get quieter and quieter. And I think you'll find, as I have, that there's beauty in this role of stewardship, this role of stewarding the possessions that we've been blessed with and given. And we won't do it perfectly. So give yourself grace when you don't do it perfectly. But no longer do we need to feel shame or condemnation from the voice that says, you've let it get this bad? There's no point. How could you? How could you let it get this bad? No longer, okay? So for mindset shift number 3, we are going to celebrate every win. And this is one of my favorite ones. I feel like it's hardly ever talked about, and I just have found it so helpful along my journey. So the inner critic that we're addressing here is the one that is so hard on ourselves. We are so hard. I don't know why, but we're so hard on ourselves. We wouldn't be like this with our best friend. Don't be like it with you. But this inner critic says, you just cleaned out the junk drawer. So what? Is that all you got? Look at the rest of the house. Don't you see the rest of the mess? So this inner critic does not acknowledge intentional improvements. And this kind of ties into mindset shift number 1. This impulse to almost instantly, immediately minimize the progress that we made is one of the biggest promoters that cause us to quit because we don't even acknowledge that we're taking steps forward. When you're feeling overwhelmed, your brain is wired to see that huge, insurmountable task that you have. So yes, maybe you got the junk drawer cleaned out, but you still have the rest of the kitchen. And yet, it's acknowledging these little wins that is the very motivation to keep going. It is the very way to get to and through and past the big monumental task. So this is what implementation looks like. After you declutter the drawer, or you fill the donation bag, or you clear the counter, or whatever that task is for you. It might be throwing away 3 expired coupons. That is still a win because you know what your house has less of now? 3 expired coupons. So after you've done the thing, you've filled the bag, you've filled the trash, you've filled the donation, you've cleaned the counter, you've cleared the floor, I want you to stop and physically look at your space and remind yourself, acknowledge and own, I did that. I have intentionally improved my space. It is better than when I first came in. It is better than when I started. And I say celebrate every win, not like hurrah, cheer, not like cheerleader hurrahs were being cheesy, but what we're trying to do is retrain our brain. Because if you're like me, for years you might have been telling yourself it wasn't enough. I didn't do it good enough. I didn't do the whole thing. That doesn't count because I still have all this to do. That little win doesn't matter because I still have all this to do. And it's really a horrible way to provide continued motivation. Like, why would we want to continue doing something when we're just telling ourselves we're not good enough and shaming ourselves? And I can kind of chuckle about it now, but I distinctly remember some seasons at the very beginning of my decluttering journey, which decluttering is a lifestyle. I'm going to continue learning and learning and learning along the way. But I distinctly remember a few times at the beginning of my decluttering journey when I was so hard on myself, and I would like work for a couple hours with preschooler and toddler and a nursing infant sleeping in the other room and just feel like I hadn't done enough. this constant negativity from this inner critic of me, of myself, of my, how do I say that? This constant critic from myself, critique from myself that I wasn't doing it well enough, just really drained, like sucked the life out of my desire to continue because I just felt like, what's the point? What's the point? And I'm not making progress, is what I would tell myself. And there were some other things at play that was counteracting my progress. And I'm going to share that in another video. But if I had earlier on just learned to embrace every small win, celebrate every small win, acknowledge that I had intentionally improved, it really would, I think, have prevented me from a big burnout session. I always forget, I think it was at least 8 months. It might have been closer to a year, but I took a very long time off from decluttering because I just was so done. I was so done. I had taken so many bags to the donation place, and yet I felt like I had made no progress. And so now that we've learned about quieting our inner critic, take a look in the description box, and I'm going to link my free decluttering guide. And hopefully you find that helpful if you're wanting to know where you should start in your home, how to pick a place to start, and then learn a little bit more about my trim decluttering method that makes decluttering simple. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope these thoughts on our inner critic was insightful for you. I've got 2 other parts in this series coming up, so stick around, subscribe if you haven't, and you'll catch those videos when they come out, hopefully soon. Thanks so much. Have a great day. Bye.